Hey, good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? Hi, my name is Sam Pierre, and I am the executive director of the Haitian American Caucus, driving coalition community development nonprofit whose mission is to bring access to resources and information to foster self development and success. I'm really excited here to be with everyone today to have this much needed conversation around the Breonna Taylor case, and we think it's really important that you, as a member of the community, can get some insight, some background from experts on the details of the case. But most importantly, what can you do if something like this were to ever happen to you? I'm really excited that we have two dynamic partners of ours who are going to come today and talk to you guys. Before we begin, if you haven't already, please go to our website, www.hacglobal.org, like on the ticker below, and click join. Join. It's a free membership. We want you to join HAC so that you can have access to more programming, information, scholarships, different opportunities that's going to benefit you and your family. You do not have to be Haitian to join the Haitian American Caucus. Anybody could join. It's a free membership. Feel free to join us. So we're really excited. I just want to give amazing shout out to some of our partners, the Crisis Action Center. We have EEP Law, PayPal, who has just come on as one of our official sponsors. And we're really, really excited. And also the Gumbo Agency, who's going to be providing us our music for this evening. So without further ado, we're going to jump in to our special music feature from the Gumbo Agency, and then we're going to jump right into our show.
I try to keep you happy, but I guess my hair's too nappy. I'm never gonna be good enough for you. You complain and drive me crazy, telling me how to be a lady, but just who are you comparing me to? I'm the one who can give you what you need, boy. It's a damn shame that you fell for the decoy. You're so blind to the ways that she'll destroy everything that you are, your whole essence. If you keep hanging out in the street, boy, you won't be able to come home to your queen, boy. She gon' use you up and put you down like a cheap toy. You gon' see what I mean, 'cause I am the only one you need. Been here since the beginning, I'll never leave. You be wise to consider, baby, all the things that I can deliver, baby. And I know you think you mean well, but good intentions pave the road to hell. You got no idea what you done bought into. And all the things that you said to me make it clear that you don't have an identity. So it's impossible for you to ever be true. 'Cause you don't even know who you are now, or who created the sun, moon, and stars now. Without this knowledge, you won't go very far now. You'll be sitting on the sidelines waiting for somebody to come and save you. But you'll be sad to find out that it ain't true. You better use this information that he gave you before it's too late. 'Cause truth is the only thing you need. Been here since the beginning, it'll never leave. You be wise to consider, baby, all the things the truth can deliver, baby. Hey! Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. listen to your mind. It'll tell you what you need. Don't fight it, don't fight it. Listen to your body, listen to your mind. It'll tell you what you need. Don't fight it, it will tell you what you need. It will tell you what you need. Oh, yeah. Listen to your body, listen to your mind. It'll tell you what you need. Don't fight it, don't fight it. Listen to your body, listen to your mind. It'll tell you what you need. Don't fight it, it will tell you what you need. It will tell you what you need. It will tell you what you need.
All right, all right. Once again, that was Anissa Strings from the Gumbo Agency, who is our music sponsor for today. Feel free to go on her YouTube page and like and follow Anissa Strings. Follow the Gumbo Agency at the Gumbo Agency on Instagram, YouTube. They are our music partner, and we can't have social justice without music. The music was how we moved a lot of our information, was how we talked to each other, and that's very, very, very important. So once again, that was Anissa Strings. Check her out. Please feel free to follow her, stream her music, as that's very important. Now, to our program, ladies and gentlemen. So I just wanted to, I'm very excited, and I want to bring on first our Reverend Kevin McCall. Reverend Kevin McCall is the founder of the Crisis Action Center, and Reverend Kevin McCall has been around working in the community for a very, very long time. And Rev, talk to the people, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on for this discussion. I'm greatly to have the discussion. I think is a much needed discussion for those individuals that have so many different thoughts and ideas of what should happen, what's supposed to happen, but to lend my perspective, being that I've been involved in this work for the last 18 years of my life and seen so many of injustices happen, I think it's a great time to be able to have a discussion and to lend a voice so we won't try to pass this road again.
Wonderful, man. I'm excited to have you. I think this is going to be a phenomenal conversation. So, we also have with us Keontae Sutherland. Keontae Sutherland is after a top flight education at Amherst College and Fordham University School of Law. Keontae began her legal career working as an assistant corporate counsel in the tort division of New York City Law Department. While working for the city, Keontae was assigned her own caseload and handled cases from inception to conclusion. Here at EEP, Keontae focuses on complex personal injury and civil rights matters, and she's running the civil rights division. Ladies and gentlemen, Keontae Sutherland. Keontae, how are you?
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me. It's truly a pleasure to be here and to be able to have this much needed discussion surrounding the events that happened with Ms. Taylor. I know that there's been a lot of questions, a lot of confusion as to not just what happened, but how this could have happened. So I'm happy to be able to have this discussion and share some of my knowledge on what I know of the case and the facts surrounding it, with everyone.
All right, wonderful. So I'm gonna hand it off to Rev. If you know social justice, you know that the Rev is in the front. The Rev has been in front of a lot of the cases. When you turn on your TV station and you see a social justice issue on TV, the Rev is in front of it. With George Floyd, he had a march with George Floyd and his family. There was thousands of people there. It was all organized by Reverend Kevin McCall. So I'm so excited. I'm handing the mic off to the Rev, and let's jump into the conversation.
Well, thank you, Sam, again. And thank you, Keontae, for lending your legal experience. We fight for justice on the ground with protesting and doing other measures, but it's good to be able to have someone that can lend their legal experience to the conversation. So let's start off with the timeline. This happened right in the smack dab middle, right before the pandemic. The COVID-19 happened. This transpired. This is way before George Floyd. This is right after actually Ahmaud Arbery. And Ahmaud Arbery case, that case had to be able to get some national spotlight for those two individuals that did the killing of Ahmaud Arbery to be able to be arrested, because that happened in February, and they wasn't arrested still. So Breonna Taylor happened, and it was a national cry for justice. A lot of people wasn't really engaged in terms of activism and activating the activism, because they were focusing really on their health at that particular point in March. So that happened in March. April transpired. That happened in terms of the conversation about charging the officers, what should happen, what needs to happen. What was they were trying to figure out who was the person that was actually responsible, whether it was James Walker, which was Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, or the police officers. May, it was the same call in terms of them trying to be able to find out what happened and what charges should be held responsible. So they opened up the investigation. And once they opened up the investigation, then questions began to chant witnesses. They were trying to gather witnesses. The FBI came in, the Justice Department came in to just open up that conversation in terms of, should these officers be held responsible for killing Breonna Taylor? Now, Breonna Taylor, let's go back, because Breonna Taylor, she was a young lady who was very inspiring to be a EMT nurse. She had a bright future. She had children. She dealt with some individuals that was not quickly on the right path, but that's her personal business. That doesn't play a factor in terms of her life or death. At the end of the day, she was a soul that God has given on this earth to be alive today. And the police came to her house, and there's still questions, and we'll get into that later in terms of how they responded to her house. But gunshots were fired into the crowd, into the home by James Walker and the officers. James Walker responded because he didn't know that the police were police, because they didn't announce themselves, and they didn't know. He didn't know, so he responded. He has legal license to carry a weapon. Right. So that's not a question. And he responded, and he shot the officers, and the officer in return responded with fire to killing Breonna Taylor. So After these investigations happened, the call, you had Oprah, you had celebrities, you had everybody in their own capacity call for justice about arresting the cops who killed Breonna Taylor. And we was patiently waiting while we were dealing with Breonna Taylor. George Floyd happened. So it was like, okay, it was a powder keg of just injustices that we're going from Louisville, Kentucky to Minneapolis, Minnesota. So it's like you're dealing with both of them at the same time, and different dynamics, but the same concept of about the police injustices across the country. So people begin to respond in their prospective ways, and with protesting, with boycotting, and putting pressure on. You had different groups actually move to Kentucky to be able to put the pressure on. You had mass civil disobedience, and those methods work. And these methods work to be able to put the pressure on to the powers that be. Then, right in the midst of that, and right in the midst of August 22nd, you had officers, no, sorry, yes, August, you had the city of Louisville, Kentucky, offers the family a $12 million settlement. And they settled, along with their attorneys, Ben Crump, and the local council. They settled for $12 million. That was in August, the last week in August. Then the following week in August, in September, it was last week. So in the following week, they said that they were still preparing grand jury. They're going to be coming out with a decision shortly. It was, as you know, grand jury is a private proceeding. So they were still waiting for that. And then the following week after that, they released the Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, released his findings in terms of saying that the police department and the grand jury actually are finding that their findings is that they are not going to charge the police officers for killing Breonna Taylor, but in fact, one officer is only going to be in charge with wanton endangerment. And he proceeded to say that that he's Black, and that we need to be able to be above this. Stop having outside agitators come to Kentucky and celebrities come to respond to about what happened. We are a close-knit community, and blah blah blah. And he said these things, and he said that the grand jury proceedings, that he will not release them to the public, because the FBI and the Justice Department continued their investigation. And once that concluded, he will release the findings of it. But there was one actual juror who actually put in a motion for the recordings to be released and redacted. And that actually happened. So he was forced to do that. So just be clear, it wasn't him doing it on his own. He was forced because of the juror and the power of the people that responded after we find out that the officers was not going to be charged with the killing of Breonna Taylor. And now that happened just yesterday. They released the hours of the recording. So that was the whole timeline in terms of what happened. And Keontae, you can start talking about actually what you feel what went wrong, and I'll jump in terms of that.
No problem. So I just want to go back to the timeline just a tad bit, just to break some things down. So yes, big picture timeline, Reverend Call, you just went through it. But for those that don't really understand or know the specifics of what happened, you have a police department who issued a warrant. So the shooting happened on March 13th. This is, as Reverend McCall said, this is the day that the country, at least New York City, New York City for sure, went into officially the lockdown March 13th, but I'm pretty sure it was across the country, officially went into the lockdown. On March 12th, you have a judge that signs off on a no-knock warrant for Miss Taylor's apartment. Allegedly, there was a package that was delivered to the apartment by her ex-boyfriend.
Which we find out that's not even the truth.
Okay, Mr.
Later
Sabor,
on.
but this is the premise in which the warrant was issued, right? So going into what went wrong, we have to discuss the warrant itself, right? And I don't have all the information because unfortunately there was yes, you mentioned the settlement. I don't want to really speak to what happens with the settlement, but I will say that one of the things that we focus on, at least at EEP, is making sure that we get all of the evidence, that we get all of the information before any type of settlement discussion would happen, because you can't talk about a settlement if you don't have all the information. And at this point, we do not have all the information. The officers, there was no civil attorney that really got to engage in the officers under oath and question them, and to figure out, what the discrepancies were in when they got to the apartment, what happened. When they got to the apartment, what did they see? Did they actually search the apartment? There's a lot of information out there that, I'm not privy to, because unfortunately, I'm not the one leading the investigation in this case. But sorry, that was a tangent. Going back to the warrant. So there was a no-knock warrant that was issued for the address. A warrant can be issued either for a person or can be issued for a specific address. So there was a warrant in this case issued for the address because it was allegedly a package that was sent to this address, and the person at issue was Glover, right? Glover is her ex-boyfriend, who at the time when the killing happened, he was already in police custody. So now let's fast forward to March 13th. You have a no-knock warrant. The officers allegedly said that they knocked, although Mr. Walker didn't hear the knock. A neighbor did not hear them announce themselves. And remember, these are 3 officers that are in plain clothing. So you have a no-knock warrant and you have 3 plain clothing officers. I mean, that to me gives a lot of grounds for confusion for the people in the house. Okay, so you have Mr. Walker, you have Breonna Taylor, who are sleeping. This is 12 a.m. or a little after 12 a.m. They hear a knock. Whether they hear the knock or not, they hear noise at the door. They get up. He has a license to carry. You have a right to protect your home and to protect the people in your home. So there is some noise at the door. He goes, the officers charge it. They break the door down. They enter the home. And once again, these aren't officers in uniform. These are not officers in SWAT gear. These are officers that are all in plain clothing. He's not expecting anyone after 12 a.m. in the morning. So yes, he fires off a shot because he has the right to protect his home and everyone in it. We know what happens next. Unfortunately, you have officers that blindly fire back, okay, into the home, multiple rounds. Miss Taylor gets shot, I believe it was eight times. Eight bullets hit her, right? And you have an ambulance that was at the scene initially, that was sent away from the scene, that comes back to the scene, and you have her not even get any type of medical attention until 20 minutes after the ambulance comes back to the scene. So there's one issue right there, because that's reckless, it's negligent, it's just depraved indifference to human life. There are 1,000 things that go wrong, right? Because even if she were the person they were going after, even if she had done something wrong, there is no law in this land that says that an officer is judge, jury, and executioner. And that, I mean, that's a slightly different topic, but that's an important topic, because even if she weren't an innocent person who was sleeping in her bed before they came and entered her house, even if she weren't, she still had the right to live. She would still have the right to live. She would still have the right to be administered medical treatment, and none of that happened. So fast forward to, you know, bringing the charges against the officers or officer. We know now that that didn't happen. There was one charge that was brought against the one officer who fired into the patio. So he actually didn't enter through the door like the other, like what is it, Sergeant Mattingly and Crossgrove. So the one officer who did get charged was Hankinson, and he actually just fired blindly into the patio. And the charge against him was for the bullets that he fired. It's against the rules to kind of just fire blindly into an apartment. So he got charged wanton endangerment, which essentially is it's reckless behavior. So the charge was not for murder against Breonna Taylor. It was not for the killing of Breonna Taylor. It was not even for the bullets that were shot inside of the home that Breonna Taylor lived in. It was for the bullets that were shot through the patio that happened to also enter into the neighboring apartment. So what went wrong is that you have a district attorney who, one, doesn't even need a grand jury to bring these charges. He could have brought the charges without the grand jury. I mean, but he chose to present them to a grand jury, that's fine. But he chooses the charges that he brings. He chooses the charges. And he did not choose a murder charge. He chose wanton endangerment in the first degree, which is what the officer was eventually charged with. So in my opinion, what went wrong is you have a very biased district attorney who seemingly wants, I don't know what he wants. I'm not going to sit here and assume that I know, you know, what his end goals was, or what he was thinking. But I do know that he absolutely did not do the right thing in bringing these charges. He didn't even give the grand jury the option to charge any of the officers involved with murder. Some of what's behind that is this qualified immunity. And I don't know if you guys have heard that term, but qualified immunity actually came down from the Supreme Court. And each state has its own, qualified immunity statute, sovereign immunity statute. And essentially, officers have qualified immunity so that they can execute their jobs. You know, the law did not want officers being subject to different lawsuits for simply doing their job. The problems behind qualified immunity is that, one, you have some officers that know it doesn't matter kind of what they do. And I'm not anti-law enforcement, because at the end of the day, we do need law enforcement. And, you know, yes, there are whatever amount of bad apples, but there also are officers that are in the communities and doing what they're supposed to do. And we do need some type of, we need law enforcement. But going back to qualified immunity, some of the issues are that, well, if I know that kind of doesn't matter what I do, I'm never going to be put on the hook for my actions, it kind of makes me a little bit more reckless. It kind of makes me a little bit more trigger happy. It kind of makes me not think before I shoot. It kind of makes me shoot first, think after. So that's a big issue. And that's something that, you know, when we talk about fighting for social justice, okay, when we talk about protecting our communities, when we talk about changing things, right? The change that gets made through the law. The biggest thing that we really have to, one of the major things we have to focus on is this idea of qualified immunity, because it allows people to go into certain neighborhoods or to go into certain apartments, okay, and act in certain ways that they might not act in had qualified immunity not existed. If I know that I'm going to have to answer for pulling my trigger, I might think twice about pulling my trigger. But if I know that I don't have to answer for it and that I'm kind of protected under the law, I might be quicker to pull my trigger. I might pull my trigger and ask questions later. So when we talk about what went wrong, you know, we can talk about the officers and the way that they executed the warrant. And we can also talk about the fact that the warrant was a no-knock warrant that was initially, it was initially a no-knock warrant for an address which the person they were going after didn't live here. And they knew that when they issued the warrant. They knew that this was not his address. Allegedly, he had received the package at this address. Is that enough to issue a no-knock warrant for 12 a.m. when people are sleeping? I mean, to me, that's kind of depraved indifference to human life, because you know what can happen with a no-knock warrant. And not just a no-knock warrant, but a no-knock warrant with plainclothes police officers executing that. What would you do if you saw two men in plain clothing just bust into your house when you're not expecting anyone to be there? To me, it kind of sets people up. It sets people up, and that's a major issue that I have with this case. Then we can fast forward to the fact that we see what happened. We see the injustice that happened. We see that this innocent 26-year-old woman got killed in her own home. You can't even be in your own home nowadays without the fear of someone barging in and you getting killed in the crossfire. And then we have a district attorney that decides to bring this charge, and the charge has nothing to do with Ms. Taylor. It has everything to do with, rightfully so, the one charge, rightfully so, did have to do with the reckless actions of the officer. But what about the fact that the other two officers also fired into the house bullets that eventually killed Ms. Taylor? And what were the charges against those officers?
Well, you know, you know, I'm sitting here thinking, and I thought about this from once I heard the actual charges that they were presenting by the Attorney General, Dan Cameron, presented and said that there was only going to be one charge to the actual Officer Hinkerson. It showed me that what information that he presented the case to the grand jury. So in order for the grand jury to be able to get an indictment, you have to provide all the information, all the facts, and you have to be able to take your time and prepare so the grand jury can get a perspective of what happened so they can be able to judge accordingly. That brings me back to cases like Botham Jean. Botham Jean, 2018, was killed, was by a off-duty officer by the name of Amber Ginger. She went to his home. She thought that it was not his home, or she thought that was someone else's home, her home, and she thought he was an intruder, and she killed him. And that grand jury presented the case, and when they presented the case, they actually saw the inconsistencies of that particular case and went forward and proceeded to find an indictment on Amber Geiger, to where she was convicted, and she had 10 years still in jail to this day. So when you look at cases like that, and you look at this case with Breonna Taylor, you can understand where the inconsistencies happened, because there was no information that was presented and is coming out now. So it's good to be able to fight for the grand jury proceedings to be public, and which was a motion was filed for that recordings and some information redacted for the safety of those who testified and witnesses. It's good to be able to have that, but you also have to have strategic strategy on what to do and be consistent when you're fighting for justice and fighting for a case. So one of the things that you do is you do not settle. No amount of money can bring back a life. I'm reminded of a story in the Bible when they offered shekels. Shekels was money back then in the Bible. And they talked about how Jesus took the shekels and threw it on the floor because they were trying to be able to offer money as a sacrifice. And Jesus didn't want money as a sacrifice. So you cannot utilize money as a tool to fight for justice, because fighting for justice will not bring back the life. If a person has to choose between money and the life, they're going to choose the life. Now, the pain and suffering and the things that they had endure and all of those, yes, they are entitled to it, and every family is entitled to money. But before you settle a case, remember this happened 6 months ago. So you settling the case in 6 months, and there's no indictment, there's nothing at all that happened. There was no justice. So we're supposed to celebrate a $12 million verdict, and we're supposed to be historic because of it was a verdict. And if you break it down, that all that money is not even going to the family. You have attorney fees, you have fees that people put in that they do when they're organizing these big massive rallies that they put it included. That would never happen in New York City because there's no judge that will even have a conversation about settling on a case when so many fees are involved, heavenly fees, especially for an attorney. So you cannot rush to judgment in settling a case for a fee for any amount of money. Not yet. Let the jury, the grand jury decide, stretch the limit. Now, don't get me wrong. You can file a notice of claim and you can say you're going to sue for whatever kind of money and minor damages you want to. But let the justice part, when they start talking about settlement, then you hold up and say, no, hold on. As a family, let's hold on. Let's decide. Let's see what the justice part. Because if you look at every case, that when a family and an attorney settles, there was no justice. None. It was a pattern that happens repeatedly. Because it looks like the systemic cultural system that we live in is that they're going to offer you money, but they won't give you the real justice that you really need. So hold up on the money. Go through the process, go through the steps, but hold up on the money and settling until you get the proper justice. And that happened in Botham Jean case where they actually they sued, but they waited. And after they waited, this officer, Geiger, got 10 years in jail, got a conviction. And that's what we wanted. Because that officer had no right going into that apartment and killing him. So when you go through that process and really have the understanding of what settling means. Also, when you go through a civil suit, you can look and you could dispose the officer. And what you can do is dispose the officer and ask the officer questions as an attorney that you can be able to use to be able to give that information to the grand jury. But that process didn't happen because once you take the money, that's it. So in the Breonna Taylor case is that they should have waited to utilize. And if it's about money for you and your family, when it happens to you, God forbid if it happens, then wait because you could get more bang for your buck. You waited. You only sell for $12 million. But what if you would have had an indictment? The value of the case goes up. So it's very important to be able to just have these conversations about what happens and what it really means to really do that. I see some questions. Someone asked, Josh Pierre asked, how does the conflict with your stand your ground type of laws? So stand your ground type of laws is very, those different states such as Trayvon Martin. It happened in
Florida.
Sanford, Florida. And we had another case that happened in Alabama in terms of the stand your ground law. It's the same particular thing when you're fighting, when you're not settling for a case and you're really fighting for those laws to be able to be changed. If you know that a law is something, that's why you have state representatives. That's why you have elected officials. That's why you have Congress people. You can be able to change these laws. Don't wait till something happens. Then you want to be able to be like, oh, let's protest. No, do it now. When the dust settles, when nothing else is going on, register to vote. Voting is important. Put your boots on the ground to be able to register to vote and petition your elected officials to change these laws. They're changing laws now and creating laws now, what they're doing in the Breonna Taylor case. And they did the same thing what they did in with Botham Jean in that particular case in Dallas. So they're creating laws now. They're doing the George Floyd Act. They're doing laws now. But these things started and was there prior to all these cases happening. So we must rise and be consistent as a people to understand the nature of what we're fighting against and where and how we can fight. So protesting is one form of dealing with the issue, and that's fine. But you also have the legal aspect to be able to deal with the issue as well. So the Attorney General in this case showed that he lied. So what needs to be able to happen now is that the Attorney General should be removed from the case. It should be a special prosecutor, not him. He was supposed to be the special prosecutor because the local district attorney appointed the special prosecutor, which was a team of folk, and he was in charge of it, which is Daniel Kramer, the Attorney General. But it needs to be an independent special prosecutor on these cases, so it can be not someone that can be biased. I don't know what his intentions are politically. We saw different things that, he's connected. He goes, his wife or fiance is the granddaughter of Mitch McConnell. We see him, he spoke at the Republican National Convention with President Trump. So we see him connected. So if we know these things, and we knew these things prior to Breonna Taylor, So if we know these things, those who live in those towns, if you know you have a corrupt system and corrupt people that are district attorneys, that are attorney general, then vote them out of office. The power is in the people to get these people out of office, but don't wait till something happens and then you want to really respond. You can respond now by getting them out of office. You have to seize. Martin Luther King always said, you have to seize the moment. You never know when a moment can turn into a movement that can change society. Rosa Parks wasn't the first person that sat on the bus and wouldn't move. It was Claudia Colvin who sat on the bus and wouldn't move. But that didn't spark a movement back then. Rosa Parks sat down and she refused to get up. And that's when they contacted the NAACP, who Rosa Parks volunteered for and went out there to get people to engage in voter education. And that's when the movement striked, right then. So you got to be consistent in terms of where you're going, where you're at, what's happening, and your surrounding. Make sure you register to vote. Make sure you go and vote. Make sure you get those people that's not of your caliber out of office and that doesn't hold the feet to the fire. So, because these injustices will continue to happen if you don't get those individuals out of office. That continues to provide our people with not the right justice that you continue to do. This man lied on tape. He lied to the country. He lied to say that he presented the whole case. So now, where do we go from here?
What about it? So, Rev, so what do you mean when you say he lied, right? Break it down for us. Like what, and Keontae, if you come in as well, when people hear that he lied, what does that exactly mean? Because you're talking about the top cop, right? For that town, for that area, for the state. So what exactly was the lie? Because if he's a lawyer and we're looking at it from the outside, we might say, well, the guy who we elected, he made the decision. He's the lawyer, and whatever he said is right. Is that how it should be, or tell us a little bit more about that?
You want to
So
go
the
first?
reason, yes. So the reason why I'm saying that he lied is because from listening to some of the audio, I haven't listened to all of it, but listen to some of the audio that was presented in the grand jury proceedings. Remember, first of all, we had to fight to get the grand jury proceedings public because he wasn't going to do that. My personal take is that I didn't care about the grand jury proceedings because I already knew that he didn't present it properly to the grand jury.
Mm-hmm.
I already knew that. So fighting for that to get it released, you already know that he didn't do that. So my thing was push the power up and the pressure up a different way because you already knew it was going to do that.
Right.
So being that it's public now and that the judge on the case said that you have to have it by 12 o'clock on Friday, which they did, it showed when he lied that he said, and this is his comments because I want to quote him correctly.
Right.
And I want to say that he said it. So Attorney General Damon Kremens claimed that the officers clearly identified themselves and therefore weren't executing a no not warrant. And it's supported by testimonies of the officers themselves and one witness of a neighbor of Taylor. But roughly a dozen other neighbors claim they have not heard anything until the police battered on the door of Miss Taylor's. The Attorney General's lone non-police witness originally said and heard nothing. So he testified and said that he heard nothing originally. But the
let me get
Attorney
this straight.
General said,
He heard nothing.
yes, the officer heard nothing.
Wow.
But the Attorney General is saying that he did hear, out of 12 witnesses, one said they heard something.
So where's that witness?
But the witness said they didn't hear anything in the beginning. So that's where the conflict comes in at. That's when he's lying because he's saying that didn't actually happen.
Right. So Keontae, let me ask you a question. When that situation happens, right, where the prosecutor says one thing, the defendant says something else, what can potentially happen? Or is it one of those things where whatever he says, that's it?
Okay, so two things. Going piggyback on what the Reverend said, that the Attorney General, elected official. So the importance of voting, 110% agree with him. Right. We need to make sure that we know who our elected officials are. From, everyone talks about voting and they think about the president. The president is the president. To be honest with you, the president has far less to do with your day-to-day interactions and effects of life than your state senators, your local senators, your assemblymen and women, the district attorneys, the attorney generals. Those people play way more importance in your life than who is the president of the United States. Aside from the fact that the president does nominate the Supreme Court justices, that's pretty important. But aside from that, those other elected officials have more to do with your day-to-day daily living than the president. So we need to be paying attention. Midterm elections, special elections, all of those, we need to be voting. Secondly, so the Attorney General, every lawyer has to upstand we have ethical and moral duties as lawyers, okay, to do our jobs and to do our jobs well. So there is a professional responsibility to do things ethically. And every licensed profession, lawyers being one of them, has to answer to a board, right?
Right.
So in this case where you have an AG who is knowingly defrauding the public, saying one thing when he knows it's not true,
Right.
saying another thing when he knows it's not true, saying that they were presented with all the evidence, which usually actually never happens, because once again, as I said initially, you don't even have to use a grand jury to indict someone.
Right.
You can bring charges against someone with or without a grand jury. You might want to use a grand jury if it's, a very high profile case, because then the people have spoken, right?
Right.
But the evidence and the charges that you bring, that's on you. That's on you to present that or to bring the charges to the grand jury. And in this case, where he has lied about numerous things that have happened in the case, there's a board that he has to answer to. His license can be taken away.
Oh, wow.
So, in terms of repercussions against him,
right.
that's something dealing with the ethical committee, professional responsibility committees. There are committees that he would have to, or boards that he would have to answer to, and a proceeding that would be brought to those boards for his actions in terms of defrauding the public in this case.
Right.
Go ahead.
Really quick, but why would he want to do something like that, right? So you and the Rev, whoever wants to take this question first, why would African-American Attorney General who understands that right now we are in one of the highest social justice and most important, most impactful social justice movements this country has ever seen, right? Where it's right in your face, social media, the communications of this is right then and there. Why would he want to defraud the public about this such a high profile case?
Well, it's a number of... Okay.
No, I was going to say, the Rev kind of actually already touched on it, right? Like, I don't want to sit here and pretend like I know what his intentions are. I'm not in his head. I am not him. I really can't say 110%, what his end game is or was. But as a Rev he alluded to this already, that he is, politically, he could be politically motivated. He was speaking at, this Republican convention. His wife is the niece of, this Republican, senator or whatever. Like, so we have a person who, yes, he's Black, right? But does it mean that he is putting his race and perhaps the needs of his race before the needs of his own personal political career? Not necessarily. So while I cannot speak to what his intentions are because I am not him, one can assume that he has political aspirations that are far beyond getting these officers indicted. He has political aspirations that are far beyond quieting, people who want justice for Breonna Taylor. He has political aspirations that, to him, he's willing to sacrifice Breonna Taylor to make sure that he secured a spot elsewhere. Okay. Right. So, you have some people that do jobs because they truly care, right? An attorney general is essentially your prosecutor for the state, right? That's your job. You are a prosecutor. You're bringing charges against people on behalf of the state. He's willing to sacrifice, to me. It's a sacrifice of Miss Taylor for his own personal gain. And that's pretty much all I can say. I don't know what his intentions are. I cannot pretend to know what his intentions are, but to me, that's what he's doing.
At the end of the day, if you look at it, first of all, he's a Republican under a Democratic state, which is very conservative in Kentucky, right? So you have an individual who Trump's puts out there as someone that he portrays. I mean, you look at his history. He was the lawyer for the Senate Majority Council under Mitch McConnell for 5 years. He
Wow.
was
A lot of
appointed.
people didn't know that.
Yeah, he was appointed by the former Attorney General, which is now the Governor, Andy Beshear, who appointed him just in December as the Attorney General. So it's very important to just know what it is in terms of what makes sense in terms of what is happening and what locally in terms of that. And the charges that was given, Daniel Girl Miller said a murder charge reduced to wanton endangerment is a crystal clear message to law enforcement that because of their badge, he is in fact justified under the law by way of qualified immunity, encouraging law enforcement to recklessly use their firearm, which continues to perpetrate systemic racial injustices embedded in the soul of the lands of the law, lands of the land. I mean, laws of the land. That's absolutely right. It's basically embedded in terms of that. So it's you got to be able to know what it is. Now, what I'm saying is that the reason why I'm saying that he's lying is because he didn't present on the facts, and based on this has to be proven for what it is, and that's why he took a long time to say that, hey, I'm going to take the long way and not release the grand jury report and allow the FBI and the Justice Department, and we know what happens when they do that. You really think you're going to get justice of a Trump administration? Attorney Barr is going to give justice to a Breonna Taylor case? Ask
Right, but
Eric Garner family.
why
They
did
ain't
it
going
take
to
so
do it.
long? Why did it take so long? That's another
They,
question a lot of people have. Why did this take so long? In New York,
so,
would it have taken this long?
Breaking up.
absolutely. So absolutely not. So my and I may get in trouble for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Eric Garner case shouldn't have taken too long. We had a black president by the name of Barack Obama. We had our black civil rights leaders that had access to the president, that was in the White House many times, that saw the facts of the case, went through two attorney generals, Eric Holder and the attorney Loretta Lynch. Two of them we went through, and we couldn't get no justice for Eric Garner. And you expect under a Trump administration that we was going to get some kind of relief under Trump? No. I think that the powers that be, everything plays, the activism, the attorneys, all of these plays a factor when you're dealing with a case. See, when you're out there protesting and you doing, which is good, y'all want justice, but there's other people that wants to be able to make sure that they still in the limelight and they still as irrelevant after this case. So you can fight for justice, but what does justice really mean? Does it mean justice for your pocket, or justice to continue to get you in the limelight so you can get other cases? So those, you have to really keep the pressure on and get the powers that be in your town, in New York City, to be able, you got to hold them accountable. Bill de Blasio should have fired the cop. It shouldn't take him waiting for the Justice Department to move for him to fire a cop. It shouldn't take all of this stuff for stuff to happen when you see it on videotape.
So are you saying that the reason why it could have taken so long was because they were waiting to figure out how to manipulate some of the evidence and the information? Or like, what do you think, Keontae? Like, what do you think? Why do you think it took this long? Because we know the Breonna Taylor case happened so long, and the social justice movement started growing, and T-shirts were made, say her name, hashtags, but we didn't hear anything for a long time. So why did it take so long?
I mean, it took so long because, to be honest with you, had the activism surrounding this case not been what it was, there would have been nothing that happened at all, to be quite frank. So, you know, it took so long because we need to figure out what charges we're going to bring. We need to figure out how we can try to seemingly bring some charges, but not really, because at the end of the day, remember, there was only one charge in this case, and it was not for the actual murder of Breonna Taylor. That charge, the officer had already been fired, right? So Detective Brett had already been fired because he did load off his weapon into a patio, and that was against protocol. But the actual murder that happened within the home, someone asked a question earlier, and it was about stand your ground and how that kind of comes into play when it comes to qualified immunity and or police. Right. So stand your ground and or the Castle Doctrine or any other law that allows people to either protect themselves, not having the duty to retreat, or protect their homes without having, a duty to retreat, using even deadly force. Those only apply if there is an illegal threat against you. So if someone is breaking into my home and there's a Castle Doctrine law that exists, right, I can shoot them, kill them, no problem, because they were doing something illegal by breaking into my home. But if a cop has a warrant for my home, enters my home and kills me, unfortunately, that warrant takes the illegal action and turns it legal. So there is no Castle Doctrine that exists. There is no stand your ground law that can exist with a legal action.
Got it.
So that's the difference, right? That's the difference. When we talk about stand your ground, when we talk about Castle Doctrine, and I know it sounds, I think the hardest part of my job of being an attorney is under the law, there's certain things that can happen under the law. It might not, to me as a person, make sense morally. It might not make sense ethically, but under the law, this is how it plays out. And this is one of those things, right? Because you're like, well, the cop, entered her home. Once again, these are plainclothes officers. How are they supposed to know if they didn't announce themselves? How are they supposed to know that these are officers? But unfortunately, the way the law is written currently, the law that currently exists, these stand your ground laws, these Castle Doctrine laws only apply to illegal acts. And if an officer has a warrant to enter the home and something happens within that home and the officer shoots, there's really nothing under the law that says that the Castle Doctrine or the stand your ground law still exists.
Wow. I mean, and you got to still continue to fight. I mean, you got to understand. There's only one officer that was fired in this case. There's them two other officers. They're still on desk duty. They're not even fired.
So what does that mean? Like, explain that to the people, Rev. What does that mean by they're on desk duty? That means they're still getting paid. They're still getting paid. They still collect a paycheck. They just go to work every day and push papers. They basically answer phones, or even if they have them not even answer phones, sometimes they just have them do paperwork that come into the office, police station every day. And that's what they do. That's what it basically is. It's desk duty. It's nothing else, nothing more, nothing less. Wow. So then we have a question here from Vladimir Sterling. Should we go after the pension funds?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I'm fighting for in New York City, is going about the pension funds and connecting it to a police officer personally, because a police officer would think twice about firing his weapon if they know that, hey, if I kill somebody or if I fire my weapon, if I'm going to lose my job and I'm going to lose my pension, then they'll think twice about killing a black or a black man or woman. because it's something that happened to them personally, not the city, not coming out the city, not coming out our taxpayers' dollars, but their personal pocket. If they can understand that, and if we can be able to get that where it's personally happened to an officer, then that's something that we can be able to continue on to do to be able to get. And then that's when it will change the narrative. But these police officers feel they can do these things on a number of bases because they are not held responsible.
Correct.
You got a racist PBA, you have a racist detective association, a sergeant association. So you have all these racist institutions that backs them up. And when they do wrong, and they do injustices, and they say they're sorry, but here's a little money, or here's a little something that you can get over it, and there's no amount of pain. Yeah, you can do all of that, but give an officer the right so it can affect him personally. Then he would decide to say, hey, I'm not going to shoot a black man today because I'm not going to lose my job for nobody.
So Rev,
sorry, wait,
go ahead,
one more
Go
thing,
ahead.
going on to that. So we talk about the pension, but as Miss Danny Miller, and as I said earlier, with qualified immunity, it's the same thing. Like with qualified immunity, the fact that I can shoot first, think later, it's going to force people to shoot because they don't have to answer, right? They don't have to answer for the actions. And even if they do have to answer, they have a shield, which is qualified immunity. So, you know, in conjunction with going after the pension. And there's some talks, you know, I used to work for the law department. So, you know, and their law department attorneys who are currently pushing to kind of change the qualified immunity, the sovereign immunity that officers get. They don't want to have to just blanket, you know, an officer does something, we are going to support the officer and we're going to go ahead and defend the officer. They want to change that so that we really, in terms of the city and the law department, really thinks twice about who are the officers that they're going to represent. We don't want to just blindly represent every officer just because they are, you know, NYPD. We want to put them to some type of scrutiny to make sure that they really deserve our representation. So there's, and when we talk about protests and just putting the pressure, this is what comes about. This is the type of change that comes about from those protests, from you know, being out there, from making it known that we're not going to sit back and just allow ourselves to be target practice constantly. You know, we have to keep fighting that fight, because without that fight, sometimes the change doesn't come. And it you know, it's tiring, it's exhausting to be the victims, but also the leaders of the fight. Right. But at the end of the day, we have to do it because the change does come. It does happen.
Wow. All right. So I want to ask the Rev a last question before I, you know, allow him to, you know, talk about the Crisis Action Network, Crisis Action Center a little bit, and what services that they could provide. So what happens if I'm a young man in New York City right now, and I'm either a witness or I'm being personally attacked by the NYPD? What is what do I do? What is my first step? Because I don't want to be, you know, Eric Gardner, or I don't want my sister to be in the Breonna Taylor, or I don't want anyone close to me or any family member. How do I get justice, Reverend McCall?
So first of all, I tell young people all the time, it's very important to do this. I mean, it's unfortunately that you have to do this, but this is what you have to do. The first thing is, when you stop by the police, whether it's in your house, whether it's you're walking on the street, whether they pull you over in the car, there's something that you have to add to the additional things that you're supposed to do. The first thing you have to do now is take out your cell phone and record. You have to record these mechanisms first. Put it on record. Don't hold it in your hand, but put it on record, because yes, they have body cams in New York City. And yes, they have body cams in other states, and they're still trying to fight for body cams in other states. But you want to have the pictures of the truth for yourself and know that they cannot manipulate anything that you said because it's right there on black and white. So when you're stopped by the police, you don't have to say yes, sir, yes, ma'am. I don't encourage that. We're not on the plantation anymore. We don't have to say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. Only we can do that just to our parents or someone that's elderly. But we don't have to say that to no police officer. We can say yes. We don't have to say yes, sir. We don't have to say no, yes, ma'am. There, we're not on the plantation. So we can say yes. How may I help you? What's the reason why I'm being stopped? And they have to tell you. They have to tell you what's the reason why you're approaching me. Or you look suspicious. How I look suspicious? There's only two ways they can stop you. It's for reasonable suspicion and probable cause. Reasonable suspicion is that you can have something bulging in your pocket or something that they can be able to see for a reason where they can say, what is that? They're not allowed to search you. Okay. They're allowed to see it and ask you to pull up your shirt or pull up whatever to see, but they're not allowed to be able to touch you if they see it at all. That's right. How it works. Probable cause is that if I got blood all over my face and down the block, the other person got blood on their face, and they say that the person that beat me up ran down the block, they can stop you for that because that's probable cause.
Right.
But anything else, they're not allowed to stop you for. And where we fell as a people is that we don't know our rights. We don't know what to do. When they come to your home, talk to them through the people. Yes, how may I help you? Oh, we have a warrant. Slip the warrant under the door. You don't have to open up your door at no time. And you don't have to open up your door at all. You do not have to open up the door. You can talk to them through we want to talk to you we want you to come down to the precinct. No, come down to the precinct for what? We want to talk to you. Am I under arrest? No. Thank you. Have a good day. You don't have to continue to have the conversation.
Wow.
Because they use tactics to sweep you on. They'll mention people's names. Come on. They'll talk to you like you're their homie. They're close to you. They'll try to be able to manipulate you to thinking that they on your side when they really trying to get you. And they trying to jam you up. So when you get to the precinct, they'll say, listen, you're gonna go. We're gonna go home. We just got a few more questions, and you'll go home. And next thing you know, they say they're reading you your rights and you're not going home. Or you're being questioned. So if it comes to a point where you are being taken out of your home or even in your car, when you stop by the police officer's car, why am I being stopped? Why are you putting me over? What's the reason why? Okay, I tell people all the time, I'd rather you get a ticket so you can live to see another day.
Right.
You can fight, you can pay for a ticket and fight it, but you can't fight for your life if you're dead.
Right.
So you don't need to have an interaction because a lot of these cops are trigger happy. They don't have the people skills. They got mental issues that they're going through their own selves. So you don't need to engage with them to be able to create these fashions for them to be able to continue on. Because they're looking for one. Look, first of all, I'm 6'3". So if they stop me, they're always intimidated to begin with.
Right. 6'3" black man. So 6'3" black. That's different. That's a different 6'3" right there.
And then with
Healthy
a black woman,
6'3",
exactly. With a black woman, it's the same thing because black women have their mouth, so they speak articulate and they have their little sass with them. They are intimidated by that. Who she thinks she is. So to avoid all of these incidents, is you record. You have very limited conversation, very information given. You don't have to give out so much information. You don't have to if they ask for your ID, you can give them your ID. If I'm not arrested, have my ID back, give my ID back. Make sure what we get caught up all the time is that we don't get badge numbers. We don't get names because we so hype in the moment till we ain't thinking. No, get badge numbers and get names because there's things that you can do that can fight, that can help with your case or with that officer, whether that officer did anything illegal or didn't practice CPR that he represents. And once that happens, then you can be able to fight for what what is right in terms of that. But you have to be able to understand what is your rights are and what it is that you're doing, and not be scared of police. You shouldn't be scared of police.
Right.
Now, I'm not against all police. There's some good cops. There's people, officers who do the right thing, and there's officers that follow the law. But I need those black officers to speak up when there's injustices, when they're with their white partners or other
Whoa.
black people, to be able to
Whoa.
speak up when they see injustices. When
Whoa,
you
whoa,
see,
whoa. What does
when
that
you
look like, Rev?
when
Hold
you
on now.
see when you see a black officer be more disrespectful to you than a white officer, then that's a problem. That means that it's something that the police department have. It's called the blue culture.
Gotcha.
It's the blue wall
Code.
of police. The
Yeah.
blue culture, it don't matter what color you are, all they see is blue. And that's what you have to get rid of in the police department, is the blue code of silence, that they see injustices and they see the disrespect and the attitude within the police department, and they don't say anything. That makes them just as worse as the white officer that disrespected you or was remaining silent.
Right.
So it's just like they don't seek that. They know that they're a black man or they're a black woman or they're Hispanic woman. They just see the color blue and they have that reference. So you have to be able to understand that when these things transpired, is that if you're going to be a good officer, be good all around.
Right.
Don't be just good to when stuff is happening. You see a lot of officers came out saying it was wrong to happen with George Floyd. It was wrong to happen, in New York. Wrong happened to George Floyd. They did videos. I could have been George Floyd, blah, blah, blah. But what was you when Eric Garner was killed?
Right.
What was you when Amadou Diallo got killed? Got shot 41 times. What was you when Sean Bell got killed 50 times?
Right.
What was you when Alvin Weaver got a plunger stuck up his rectum?
Right.
So don't be black when and be a tag along when it's hot.
Yeah.
Be black when
convenient.
it's cold.
Ooh, absolutely. So I'm Keontae. So all right, so Rev, I know Rev has to go, so we wanted for you to talk to the viewers about, what do you think they can do? What is the Crisis Action Network doing? And then we'll go to Keontae. She could talk about what work you're doing at EEP and how people can reach out to you, and what services is EEP providing, and how people can how they can get representation. So let's go to the Rev first. Rev, tell them what can they do, how can they get in touch with the Crisis Action Network, how can they participate, how can they volunteer, and what are some of the services you provide, and what are some of the movements that you're doing in the future?
Well, Crisis Action Center was an organization that I founded, and we have been doing some tremendous work. Before it was a hot topic. We dealt with police misconduct and police brutality, but we also had food injustice, because social justice is a food injustice is a social justice issue as well. Now everyone is doing the food banks and food things, and because of food insecurities, and that's great. But the number of services that we offers assistance in housing and child support in any crisis that you have. It doesn't necessarily have to be a police misconduct. Any crisis that you particularly have and you need help in, we are here to help. And you can be able to, contact us, and we can be able to help you with any crisis. It doesn't matter how big or small, we can help you through it all. We can pray with you. Some organizations, they just not an organization that doesn't have a conscience or just do the work, but we believe in prayer, because prayer can change things. And so if you have a crisis, doesn't matter how big or small, doesn't matter. We service the whole 5 boroughs, including New Jersey and Connecticut. So we're out there dealing with issues that affect normal day people, everyday people, that we can do that. So if you want to contact, you want to volunteer, we're doing things for the holidays and connecting individual with different resources, whether it be lawyer referrals or connecting them to any resources that they can have, or helping them with their rent, or whatever the case may be, whether it's child support or whatever the case. the crisis. And you can contact us at 929-320-3911, and you can be connected to us. You can also watch us on Tuesday nights, the Reverend Kevin McCall, the Social Justice Show with Reverend Kevin McCall on Tuesdays on Ruco, on Apple TV, as well as all app social media platforms every Tuesday at 6 o'clock. We talk about different issues that happen on everyday platforms. So that's what we do, and that's how you can get in contact with us if you need any assistance.
Well, Rev, we want to thank you so much for being out here and for being our social justice preacher. We know that you're working very closely with EEP and Keontae, and you guys are a 1-2 punch. And I think that's phenomenal. I think it's great for the people to know that there are organizations out here that people can come and reach out to. There's a representation there. There's the social justice arm, and then there's a legal arm. And I want the people to understand that those two have to come together in order for you to really get the justice that you need, because you're going to need the social piece if you're going to need the housing, or you might need, some help, or you might need medical help if something happens. And then you also have the legal piece that's there to represent you as well. So we just want to say thank you, Reverend McCall. Any last words for the people?
No, I'm grateful for, just having the opportunity to have this conversation. I'm looking forward to many more conversations with individuals that can be able to really understand the nature. And I know we talked about we're going to do a part 2. I'm grateful for that conversation with individuals that are dear and near to me that can really brainstorm on what is happening in our city and our country, and that because we need the legal part, we need the justice part, but there's one main part that we need is our mind.
That's right.
And our mind is really a thing that we need because we're going through a lot as a people. And social work is definitely something that clinical perspective needs to be talked about everything. We're dealing with COVID on one hand, and we're dealing with the police injustice on the other hand. We're dealing with a racist and fascist president with our left foot. And then our right foot, we're dealing with injustices that happen on an everyday basis, nonstop. So just look at the timeline. You had Breonna Taylor, then you had Ahmaud Arbery, then you had George Floyd, and then from George Floyd, you had Jacob Blake. So it's like it doesn't stop. It's an ingoing. So where do we have to have a sane mind and a conscious mind. Growing up, they used to say a mind is a terrible thing to waste. So we need to be able to get our mind and our psyche together before we go crazy.
Thank you so much, Rev. We look forward to working together and keeping the work going. And I look forward to working with you and Keontae in the future. Thank you so much, man. You have a great one.
All right, you.
So, Keontae, a lot of people want to know, all right, I have an issue, but I'm scared, or I can't afford an attorney. I've been dealing with some injustices at work. I've been dealing with some injustices on my way to work, or I got pulled over and something just doesn't seem right. What should I do? You run the civil rights division at EEP. Talk to us about EEP. Talk to us about what can a person do? An average person who may feel like they don't have representation, they don't have any money. What can they do?
So Reverend McCall touched on much of what you should do in the individual situation. I think some of the most important things being just know your power, know your power. And we can't be, you don't have to be docile. You can stand up for yourself, and it's okay to demand of the officers their badge number. They're required to give it to you. They're required to show you, display their badge, get the badge numbers, get the names. They're on Rodriguez or whoever it is with the 4, 5, 6 number, badge number. As you said, they They can do a stop if they want. They can't search your car unless they have a warrant. If they have a warrant, demand to see the warrant, whether it's the car or the house. He touched upon probable cause or reasonable suspicion. Let's even say they're in the car and they, probable cause because someone fit the description, which is such the common thing, fit the description, yet they can find a way to make anyone fit the description.
Right.
So we got to be careful with that.
Right.
But fit the description, and it's a body that they're looking for. Well, don't open my glove compartment because a body can't be in there. You might be able to search the trunk, but you cannot search the glove compartment. You cannot search the center console. If they're looking for a weapon, like let's say a big rifle, once again, you cannot open my glove compartment. You cannot open my center console because that can fit in there. Right. So just knowing what these officers can and cannot do, and also what you're entitled to do as a civilian. You can record, you can take down the badge numbers, you can take down the names, you can ask them for a copy of the warrant. That's important. But here at EEP, listen, I always say, I hope that you guys don't need me. That's the first and foremost, because if you're coming to me, that means there's an issue. That means there's something that happened. Because we are a full service personal injury firm, right? So we're dealing with civil rights, okay, and injustices, whether it's police brutality or it's some type of discrimination at the hands of the police or an employer or anyone else, right? So that's talking about civil rights. But we're also dealing with people that have been hurt on the job, right? So a lot of the cases that come in, we're talking about laborers, some of whom are undocumented, many of whom are undocumented, some of whom are paying taxes, maybe even under, I don't know, a social security number that's not theirs. Right. Many of whom are, because they're undocumented, they go to work, they get injured, and their boss is telling them, you're going to go to the hospital and you're going to say that you were playing soccer and that's how you got injured, knowing that the person fell off of the scaffolding. Wow. Okay. So these things happen. And when we talk about injustices, these injustices are not just at the hands of the cops, right? They're at the hands, they're all around us. It could be an employer, it can be another person in the car or a truck driver who sees that you're in the road and just pummels through you. We deal with all injuries of all types. Okay. So we're dealing with, yes, there are car accidents. Yes, there are labor law cases. And yes, we have the civil rights violations. So we are a firm that you can call when you feel like your rights in any way, shape, or form have been violated. Right. Okay. I don't want people call. I'm going to give you my number, which is 212 532-1116. My extension is 1157. You call me with anything. Your rights have been violated because, your landlord did something. Call me. Your rights have been violated because your job.
Give me the number one more time.
Sure. That's 212-532-1116. My extension is 1157. So that's direct to me. Now, I'm not saying I don't do landlord-tenant law, okay? But that doesn't mean that if you call me that I'm not going to go ahead and put you in contact with someone who can help with it. Right. The point is that it is my duty as a Black female attorney, born and raised in Brooklyn, Flatbush, Brooklyn, to be there for my community. Right. And when I talk about being there for my community, it's more than just being an attorney, because yes, I'm an attorney. I'm an attorney who was a former public school teacher that taught special ed for 5 years. I know many different people, but the community, and especially the youth, that's where my heart is. Right. Because at the end of the day, I might be in this position, but there are many other people in my community that could also been in this position, but just weren't afforded the opportunity.
Right.
So it's important for me to be there for those members of the community and making sure that, you know, we have cases where someone is living, I'm not going to name the complex, but someone's living in a certain complex and the ceiling collapses. And they've been complaining about the ceiling and the leaking ceiling forever, for 1 year, 2 years, you know, for even 1 month or 2 weeks is too long. And why is it that certain communities get subject to that? Why is it that certain landlords can come and you could complain about a leak in your ceiling and they do nothing about it? Because it doesn't happen in every community. It happens in some communities. That's an issue.
Right.
So, you know, as I said, yes, we're dealing with the injustices at the hands of law enforcement, but injustices come at the hands of many. It's not just law enforcement, unfortunately, that we have to deal with. And when you talk about social justice and you talk about the law and how they interconnect, there is no change that can be made without the law.
Right.
That is how we implement change in this country.
Wow, that's deep.
But the change comes through the social justice movement. Because while this pandemic has negatively impacted our communities, specifically the Black community, in an immense way, I sometimes, you know, we sit there and we say, well, why do things happen? And I think that there's a reason why things happen.
Right.
Because had it not been for the pandemic and for the stillness of the world, Breonna Taylor and the George Floyd and the Abu Ahmad, those cases might not have been on the forefront of the world's mind had it not been still, because we were forced to be still. So while we are dealing with a major health crisis and we are dealing with these injustices, the pandemic and the slowing down and the stilling of the world has allowed people to be able to think about the injustices that we're facing. We know we're facing it because we live it in our everyday lives.
Right.
We live it when we walk into a store and someone's following us around. We live it when someone's clutching their purse because we walk by them. We live it when we get unfairly stopped in a car because it's too fancy at the eyes of, you know, whoever's stopping us. We live it in our everyday lives, but the world now sees, they have some insight into what we're facing. So all that being said, to say, you know, we are a full service PI firm who, you know, we're dealing with the day-to-day struggles, the day-to-day injustices, the day-to-day injuries that people, I'm a Brooklyn girl, so of course my passion is Brooklyn, but you know, obviously we deal with cases and things that happen all over. But when it comes to you know, the community itself, you know, I have a special place in my heart for my Flatbush community because that's where I was born and raised. So.
Right. Well, Keontae, we just want to say thank you for coming on today. And we just want to say it is a complete pleasure for HAC to partner with EEP and to work together with a firm that cares about our community. We're excited about this partnership, and we're excited to be working with you, working with Reverend McCall, because when these issues happen in our community, we don't want to just stand by on the sidelines. We want to know that we have partners that we can talk to, partners that we can communicate with and say, listen, call Keontae. She'll make sure you're taken care of. She'll look at your case. Not every case is a case, right? Not everything is a case. However, let's at least take a look at it. Let's at least make sure that we have the right representation, because it might be a case, right? 3 of them might not be, but 1 of them might be a case.
And so, it's about awareness too, right? Because as I said before, you know, to legally speaking, something might be one way, but morally speaking, it seems a little corrupt. Unfortunately, the moral side of things or the ethical side of things and the legal side of things aren't always on the same page. So while it seems completely unjust, you know, that something happens, it's also my job to inform the community and let them know what the legal implications behind that are or are not. So yes, you know, I always say to people, do not close a door on yourself. Let the door be shut for you. Don't assume that something is okay because, oh, it was an officer who did it, so it must be okay. Like, make sure that you ask somebody who really does know, who can dig in, who can get the facts, who can look at it and say, okay, well, you know, legally speaking, there's really nothing I can do here. Because sometimes, you know, I'm being a West Indian, first generation West Indian person, the laws back home are very different from the laws here. So something that might have been okay back home is not okay here, because we might have more rights. We might have more protections that are given to us. So, you know, people come here and they think, oh, well, this must be so because, you know, the teacher said it, or because the cop said it, or because the doctor said it. And they don't kind of second guess or question what's happening. And that's where I come in. So it's not just, as I said, I was a teacher first. So it's not just about also being the lawyer, but it's about being a source of information for the community.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, EEP. I'm excited. I'm excited for the work we're doing together. I got my EEP t-shirt on. I'm ready to go. We look forward to working together. Our community is excited. We want to learn more. We look forward to part 2. We had a lot of questions and comments that unfortunately we just couldn't get to all of them because the conversation was so rich. But we look forward to working with you. We look forward to working with all the other attorneys that work with you.
Absolutely.
We just want to say thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for coming on board here. Any last words for our viewers?
Listen, last words are, you are worth it. And that's it. Just keep fighting a good fight, everyone. However it is that you're doing it, whether it's going out and voting, whether it's just being informed, whether it's making sure that your neighbor gets to the polls. We just have to, we have power in us as people, and we have to make sure that we are the forces that we are, because at the end of the day, each and every one of us has power. So don't forget that, and keep fighting.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And tell all our friends at EEP that we look forward to working together with them.
Will do. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, this has been the Haitian American Caucus, HAC TV. We're really excited that you guys were able to stay with us with this programming. This conversation was extremely important to what's going on in our community. And we want to remind you, as members of HAC, as friends, as family members of HAC, that your rights can be protected. Please join us. It's a free membership. Go to www.hacglobal.org/join. Click on the button. Tell them that Sam Pierre told you to join, or whomever else, Elisha Pierre, whoever else on our team told you to join. And join and be a part of this amazing network of folks who are trying to do better for our community. So once again, we just want to thank all of our sponsors, all of our partners. We want to thank EEP Law. Google them, and they are a great partner. We look forward to having them. We want to thank the Crisis Action Center with Reverend Kevin McCall. We want to also thank our executive producer, Elisha Pierre, who is the operations director for the Haitian American Caucus, Francois Jonty, who's another producer for the Haitian American Caucus, M. Joanne Pillard, who was our creative director, and everyone else who was part of the Haitian American Caucus team. Thank you so much for helping us put this program together. We look forward to having you. Thank you very much. We're out.